I am very glad to be here talking to you about this topic, white rural rage, because I am a white person and I live in rural America. And we're going to talk about my rage later in the show. But the first thing I want to do is show you the video that we're going to be talking about today, which was a segment on MSNBC, probably not shocking to many of you there. A segment on MSNBC interviewing a University of Maryland professor and also New York Times Nobel-winning New York Times reporter talking about a new book, White Rural Rage, written by this University of Maryland professor. And if your eyes are not rolling very far back into your head by the time that the first couple of minutes is over, which is all I'm going to show right now, it's a 8-minute long segment you can see here. We're just going to watch the first couple minutes, the opener. If your eyes are not rolling into the back of your head, definitely I want to hear from you about why. Because I was sitting here thinking, I literally laughed out loud. I don't take this stuff that seriously, other than the fact that I know there are people who watch this and take it seriously. And it's like, it's really hard to take this stuff seriously. I sometimes wonder if this is an Onion article. It's not. It's a real book. Let's listen.
So why is it that Trump appeals so much to a group he couldn't be more different from? Joining us now, Professor of Political Science at the University of Maryland, Baltimore County, Tom Schaller, and journalist and opinion writer Paul Waldman. Their new book, out tomorrow, is entitled White Rural Rage, the Threat to American Democracy. And Tom, we'll start with you. Why are white rural voters a threat to democracy at this point? You would think, as we pointed out, looking at Joe Biden's background and Donald Trump's, that the opposite would be true.
I mean, we lay out the fourfold interconnected threat that white rural voters pose to the country. First of all, and we show 30 polls and national studies to demonstrate this. So we provide the receipts in Chapter 6. They're the most racist, xenophobic, anti-immigrant, and anti-gay geodemographic group in the country. Second, they're the most conspiracist group. QAnon support and subscribers, election denialism, COVID denialism and scientific skepticism, Obama birtherism. Third, anti-democratic sentiments. They don't believe in an independent press, free speech. They're most likely to say the president should be able to act unilaterally without any checks from Congress or the courts or the bureaucracy. They're also the most strongly white nationalist and white Christian nationalists. And fourth, they are most likely to excuse or justify violence as an acceptable alternative to peaceful public discourse.
So you mentioned a lot of negative factors about this demographic. Tom, what else do they have in common?
I think that what really matters at
what
this
makes
point
them
in time,
vulnerable?
Oh, well, a lot of that has to do with, as a starting point, the problems that rural America has, which are very real and very profound. Mm-hmm. They have the more problematic education systems. They have poor infrastructure. They've had a lack of economic opportunity. We've seen a lot of manufacturing jobs leave from rural areas. And that kind of left them open to someone like Donald Trump, who would come along and tell them something that was true, that there is a system that has not served them well. Mm-hmm. And he said—
They're pissed off.
They are pissed off, and they have some reason to be. Mm-hmm. With both parties. The trouble is that what Donald Trump gave them was not something that was actually going to fix those problems, but was just a kind of a way to channel their rage and anger. And, we've been told for so long, especially Democrats have been told, that in order to get rural voters, to get them to listen to you, you have to go there, you have to really empathize with them, you have to show them that you understand their lives, you have to, put on a Carhartt jacket and go down to somebody's farm.
Have a beer.
And maybe milk a cow.
Yes.
And it turned out that none of that was true.
No.
When Donald Trump came along, he didn't do any of that stuff. He was just a conduit for their rage, their anger, their resentment. And
okay, I'm going to stop it there for a second. There's a lot to unpack in the first guy, what he was saying specifically about all the things that people in rural America, white people specifically in rural America, don't like. Like, they hate the free press. They hate the free press. I love that. They're just going to get behind one guy, one president, and think they should have all the powers. And I'm sitting there thinking, what is this projection on some kind of hilarious level? Because when I think about free speech, I'm definitely not thinking about threats coming from rural America. I'm thinking about threats coming from Washington, D.C. When I'm thinking about threats to the First Amendment related to the press, I'm not thinking about rural America. I'm thinking about Washington, D.C. I'm thinking about the status quo. I'm thinking about the partnership actually that these folks have with each other, the media, the academics, and the current administration. Actually, since we're talking about all this, they actually opened, I didn't show you it, but the very beginning before this segment was talking about Biden and how he's, comes from like a working class background. And so why wouldn't why wouldn't rural America like Joe Biden? And so they're talking about like, this just doesn't make any sense. Trump doesn't have anything in common. He's like this rich guy from the city, and Biden's like a blue collar guy from more of a country type atmosphere, and it doesn't make any sense. And I'm saying like all the things they name, like the threats to elections and like the threat to, they say democracy. Of course, most of you all know we're just using that term. We don't actually have a democracy in the United States. We have a constitutional republic, whatever, throwing words out the window. Who cares what they mean? But you have to, when watching this kind of stuff, you have to ask how they define their terms, because what we define as the constitutional republic that is supposed to be the United States, I don't think it means what they think it means the way they're talking about it, because we often hear these segments, whether they're in television news or they're written publications, about the greatest threats to democracy. And of course, misinformation is often put out there, especially by journalists who are cheering on censorship, because they'll talk about the people spreading all the misinformation. Of course, they never consider themselves in the category of spreading misinformation. And so you have to first ask, what do they even mean by misinformation before you're going to even debate it? And in these particular cases, you have to ask, what do they even mean by democracy? And my take on it is they mean the status quo. They must mean the status quo, because what they're really saying is, who's the greatest threat to our way of life? Who is the greatest threat to our way of life? Is it Joe Biden? Is his administration, which has basically walked lockstep with the national news, with the health agencies, with the pharmaceutical companies, with the media, I think I already named that, with the big tech companies. I mean, is it that? No, that's not a threat to democracy. I mean, how could that be a threat to fair elections and medical freedom and the First Amendment and the Second Amendment? My husband just screamed from the kitchen. I mean, how could that be? It's obviously a white guy in Carhartts milking cows, as they were talking about, which are like, that didn't work, because Trump didn't have to do that. Yeah, I'm shocked that just like a bunch of people in the country don't buy it when you just come out and drink a beer and wear Carhartts and milk a cow. I mean, they saw through that. I mean, anyway, I'm going to show you a video of me in my white rural rage picking up hay in a second. Okay, so stick with me if you don't mind. Real fast, I want to tell you about one of my new sponsors, TeleRx. If you are somebody who does not want to wait in lines at the pharmacy, which I just had to do for an EpiPen, finally left, couldn't take it anymore. Couldn't afford an EpiPen, actually. Have to have this because I had a systemic reaction to my second wasp sting recently, hornet sting. And so they sell it at 50% off of what the pharmacy here in town. So I could actually afford it. I left the EpiPen at the pharmacy because I was not going to pay $500 for it. It's $250, which isn't great. I mean, honestly, the fact that EpiPens, which is a government thing, you can go back and look at why the prices of EpiPens are inflated, and you can thank the U.S. government for that. But anyway, if you go to telerx.com and you use Allison as your promo code, you get 20% off. Here's how TeleRx is different from a lot of the online pharmacies that have been popping up. Number one, you do not submit any data about yourself. You don't have to submit a prescription. You don't have to fill out any forms about yourself. You don't have to submit any images. It keeps all of your personal information private for you because you don't have to submit any of it. All you're doing is consenting to understanding what like in my case, the EpiPen does. I just say, yes, I understand what an EpiPen is used for. And that's it. I don't have to tell them about anything. And so there's no data mining when it comes to TeleRx, unlike a lot of the other online pharmacies that have become very popular in the last few years. Number two, they will not bow to medical freedom issues. Okay. So we've heard a lot about pressure from the government and hospital groups and health commissions and whatnot to say, you cannot prescribe. And you all know, I don't have to tell you what has happened over the last couple of years specifically. They are not going to do that. They offer the drugs that a lot of pharmacies refuse to write scripts for. And you go immediately, your information, when you click the box that says that you understand what the drug is used for, it goes directly to a doctor. Within hours, you are going to basically have this put in the mail. And if not within the next day, I got my EpiPen within a couple of days. I have 2 of them now, and I'm glad to have them, even though I'm totally a natural health person and I'm taking lots of vitamin C now, hoping that that's going to keep this from happening again. But I do not have the luxury of just waiting around and seeing. I'm by myself a lot with my kids. I cannot go into anaphylactic shock. So anyway, and then a final thing, like I said, they're direct consumer pricing, so it's a lot cheaper. So consider going to TeleRx, Allison, ALISON, 20% off of your order with promo code Allison. Okay, so I want to go back to, I think Matt Taibbi actually did a pretty good job of this analysis. MSNBC, Paul Krugman, panic over white rural rage. And one of the things that I appreciated about Matt Taibbi's article was discussing how this is not the first time that this has been used as a propaganda tool, basically. I mean, he has this cartoon from 1896. And he writes, when rural voters in the late 1800s defied New York banking interests and demanded currency reform to allow farmers an escape from one of the original, quote, rigged games in finance, relentless propaganda ensued. Rural populists were depicted as dirty, bigoted, ignorant. They refused expert wisdom, represented a frantic challenge against every feature of our civilization, that's a quote, and waged a, quote, shameful insurrection against law and national honesty. A populist caricature in Judge magazine showed a violent, destructive idiot, a real-life Lenny from Still Unwritten of Mice and Men, standing over the defiled corpse of civilized America. The theme is back, condescension multiplied despite a pandemic that just graphically demonstrated the social contributions of farmers, truckers, train operators, and other essential workers. The people working those jobs were demonized during the crisis as murderous horse paste eaters and insurrectionists. Their chief crimes, protesting lockdowns and school closures that disproportionately affected them, and being consumers of supposed foreign-inspired misinformation that led them to refuse appropriate political choices offered to them. So yes, I think it was good of Matt to show, look at this, to show the history behind this. This is called The Assassin. And yeah, look, in this guy's hand, it says down with the courts. And this, I think this says repudiation on the knife. This is a U.S. Treasury. But anyway, yeah, anarchy. Look, it says anarchy on his belt thing here. And so it's nothing new. I think it's good for Matt to have pointed that out. And, I'll say this much. One thing they're right about is that people are angry. When you talk to people right now, they are angry. And they're angry in a lot of places, not just out in rural America. I live out in rural America. And I hear how people talk about it. I mean, I'm one of those people that talks regularly about my criticisms over exactly the stuff they're saying has no problem. That we just all need to get in line. But I will warn people that the rage is not going to do anything other than lead you down a path of being tricked, honestly, into things like a January 6th. And someone's banging on the door. Lynn, could you come in and help me with someone banging on the door? Anyway, someone's ragefully banging on the door outside my studio. I think it's the producer. Yes? Okay. So I would say that the rage is not going to serve if you're somebody who is very angry, you're getting into fights all the time, you just hate so much right now what's going on. I'd say your criticisms are probably fair, but the anger is going to be used as a tool to trick you. So you got to find the path of peace and strength in the peace of the resistance. Okay. I just say that just because I see so much of that, and not necessarily, like I said, not so much necessarily with my neighbors out in the country, but I see a lot of it online, and like, especially in like a lot of the commentary that pundits often do. I think that it's been really easy to try to like get an audience right now if you just feed that anger. And I think actually on some level, people, they really want it, and you're boring or something nowadays if you're not you're not hysterical all the time. But just be aware of that, because I think they like it. In other words, I guess my point is, I think the media likes it, actually. I think they talk about how scary it is, like they're scared of it, but I don't think they're scared at all. I don't think they're scared at all in their studio about, I don't think these people are actually that scared. I think they knew that they were going to write a book that their constituents were going to eat up, because it's scary for those people there. But I don't think these people are actually scared. I don't think Mila, if that's how you say her name, I don't think she's scared in her studio in New York City or DC, wherever she is. Yeah. And see, look, white rural rage looks at the most likely group to abandon democratic norms. That's why I'm saying you have to say, what do they mean by democratic norms? What exactly do you mean? Because honestly, when I talk to people in rural America, I hear them constantly talking about how important the First Amendment is, how important censor-free speech is, how important election fairness is. So actually, these sound very appropriate to the history of like what we would talk about with the United States, but it obviously doesn't compute with them the way they define it. So what do they define as democratic norms? I mean, you have to ask that, really, right? Because if people who actually do care about the First Amendment and have been the ones who have been censored, I bet if you were to look at that, where are a lot of the people who have been ripped offline? Where do they live? So if you look at that, I mean, I just think it's just fascinating. You have to ask, like, what are they defining? What are they calling democratic norms? Because I don't think it's that. Okay, I'm going to show you in a second what my white rural moment is. Okay, but I don't want to forget about my AllisonWinePromo.com. You know that you get 50% off my favorite wines, 50% off shipping with AllisonWinePromo.com. These are my favorite Malbecs from Argentina. They come from extremely remote, high altitude, 6,000, 9,000 feet. And they're from very small vineyards, handpicked grapes, natural fermentation, no filtration, out in very, very high remote places. So there's a lot fewer pesticides, air pollution, smog, that kind of thing. And it tastes really good because the grapes have to work really hard in these conditions. So it's tough. All right. They are the extremist of the extremist wines. If you're an extremist, or maybe you want to be an extremist, you're watching this and you're like, wow, you know what? I don't want to have a lot of rage, but I do want to be an extremist. I still live in my grandma's basement. I haven't done anything with my life. All my friends are extremists. Then this is a way to do it. Get a glass of Allison Wine Promo, or take it to your best extremist friend and tell them to calm down, have a glass of wine. We'll talk through it. AllisonWinePromo.com, my favorite wines, and a great company that has supported me for a long time. Okay. Really appreciate everybody who's still with me here. I'm going to queue up my video, and I want to make sure everybody knows that you should be following my Off-Gridish Living channel so that you can watch videos like this all the time, because we have a farm channel, and this was one that I did about me versus 1,000-pound hay bale and all kinds of white rural rage. Let's watch a segment. I have two kids who are basically still kind of puking in the back seat of the truck right now, but no rest for the weary on the farm because we ran out of hay, so we got to get hay. And this is how you get hay. And I got to push this thing off the truck by myself. So anyway, who wants to go back to living like they did 200 years ago? I do, except 200 years ago they didn't have tractors, but they still did have this and this. And that's what I'm going to be using today by myself. Stay tuned. This is our first time getting a round bale, and while I have had help getting it onto the truck, now I'm going to go home and I'm going to have to push it off by myself. Get away from the truck. Okay, and then the cow escapes, and you're going to see in a second how I had to push this off by myself. See, that's Daddy Cow. All the animals escape. See, these are the fun adventures you're missing if you're not subscribed over at Off-Gridish Living. Off-Gridish Living at YouTube. Okay, so that's my one YouTube channel that see how I am, see what I do for these animals out here. This is my gym membership, and it'll probably be the only footprint I have on YouTube. Look at that mess. It'll be like the only footprint I have on YouTube probably coming here because I so far have not gotten suspended on this channel, but they have not figured out yet it's me. So I don't know. Anyway, what's funny though is that on my current YouTube channel, Allison Morrow, well, this is current, but on my first YouTube channel, the Allison Morrow channel that you'll be watching this video on later on YouTube because you're not watching it live right now because I don't do live on YouTube anymore. The funny thing is that I actually just had a suspension. My first warning was just removed. And so far, I don't have any strikes, and I'm strike free according to my channel. It has not helped viewership or anything, but you know, maybe it will at some point. I don't know. I just would not be only following me there because I think that's probably not going to last forever. Okay, I'm going to finish up talking to people on Locals and Rockfin. If you're a subscriber, that's where you're going to get it. See, I'm going to hit for supporters only on Locals right now. So it's going to be for supporters only. Do a few minutes over there with the editorial board. If you're watching on Rumble or anywhere else, don't forget, send me some mail. P.O. Box 3355, Denellen, Florida, 34432. I love getting people's letters. Thanks to everybody who's written me. Thank you to the folks who sent me this bookmark, pictures, just nothing creepy. Okay. And we will see you next time.